Hi, my name's Hudson, and I'm a geoholic.
Oh my God. Have I told you guys how much I like music?
It's a little mellow vibe.
God, I miss live music. Holy cow. Welcome back, everyone, and thanks so much for listening to another value-adding installment of the Geoholics Anonymous. That opening song is by our newest pod artist, Kent Groh. He's been called the best one-man band in the world. The name of that song is New Age Blues from his 2019 album titled I See. Be sure to check him out on all your music platforms. He's freaking amazing. I mean, unbelievable how talented this guy is. As you know, this is our roundtable formatted discussion on topics impacting the geomatics world today. So guess what? We've got another great group of panelists that we're going to get to in just a couple minutes. I do want to mention a couple things. First, we had two very generous donations to the Geoholics GoFundMe account this week. Corey Allred from Parkland Community College and the one and only Will Wing with Infinity Land Surveying. Thank you guys so much. Can't tell you how much we appreciate the support. By the way, if you're not connected with Will Wing on LinkedIn, you might want to do so. He posts some really cool, surveying pics from his adventures on a daily basis, basically. Just some really cool stuff. And second, if you haven't seen it already, we have started adding a video component to the podcast and would love for each and every one of you to take literally 30 seconds and subscribe to the Geoholics YouTube channel. It's my understanding from producer Jake that we need 100 subscribers in order to get a dedicated URL. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, once we get 100 subscribers, we'll go ahead and iron down youtube.com/thegeoholics.
Fantastic. This train's a rolling, boys. My name is Kent, and I am not ashamed to admit that I am definitely a geoholic. Of course, I have two of my best friends in the whole world with me, they being Big Shoots and producer Jake. Producer Jake, how have you been, buddy?
Doing pretty good. Just doing my normal here, sailing on the weekends, producing podcasts on weekdays, and working in between there sometimes. So doing really good and just moving through life here.
Making it happen.
Doesn't sound like a bad gig.
Not at all. Are you kidding me?
No, not at all. So I got to throw this out at you guys. I saw something online, and I received some phone calls. I'm not going to make light of somebody dying. But locally here in Arizona, in Scottsdale, El Dorado Aquatic Park, where they have water slides and stuff.
Oh, my God, I saw this.
There was a dude that got, stuck in there and died. And what was his name?
What was it?
Ryan Kelly.
Was it really?
Yes.
I did not know
I got
that.
phone calls from people saying, oh, it's good to hear your voice. I thought you died or something like that. And you know who I didn't hear from? Either one of you two.
You know what? I read the first 5 sentences of that story. I didn't see the person's name, obviously. And I'm just like, who? What the fuck?
I got a call from Indiana today, and she was just like, just making sure you're alive. I was like, I appreciate it. Glad to hear you care. I didn't hear from either of you guys, though. So maybe a little bone to pick there.
We knew you were okay.
Well, it was a 31-year-old transient, so I was 0 for 2 on those.
It could have been you.
I'm a little older, and I have a home for now, at least.
Right.
So other than that,
So
I got to tell you
funny.
guys this morning, because the lovely Carrie, as you say, was out for a walk and humble brag doing the old dad thing, getting Hudson up for school and breakfast and all this. She comes tearing in the house, and she just looks at me. She's like, I got stung by a bee.
Oh, Jesus.
Like, out of nowhere. And then she's like, it dive bombed out of the tree, and it literally got her right on the tip of her nose. So she was walking around today with this big honking thing on her nose, like, I don't know why it came after me. I didn't do anything to him. So that was my excitement today. But what's new with you, Kent?
Funny. Oh, man, lots of things new with me. I started a new gig this week, which I'm totally stoked about. Connect with me on LinkedIn to find out more. Other than that, honestly, I'm just waiting for the daytime temps here in Arizona to drop below 115 degrees. It's freaking brutal here.
It's not going fast enough.
No, man, it's got to break sometime. All right, with that, quick safety share. Speaking of LinkedIn, I see that a bunch of folks, like I say, including myself, are changing jobs right now. So just something I want to make note of. As you get this fresh start, remember it's important that you engage yourself with your new company. If you aren't engaged with the company outside of meetings and normal job duties, that's a problem. It's important that you feel invested in the company, volunteering for projects, lending a hand outside of their normal duties, joining a committee or team, or participating in company-sponsored programs can immerse you into the company's culture. It is proven that employees that have a vested interest in the company will do a better job of maintaining safety standards than someone who just simply shows up to work each and every day. So,
I just hear add value, make friends. Is that what you were going to say?
Be engaged. Be engaged with your company, whoever you're working for. All right, let's get started with this panel of esteemed guests that we have with us this evening. But before we do, I want to give each of them an opportunity to introduce themselves. So what we're going to do this week, we're going to go with your name, your current role or who you work for, what you're doing. And we always try to keep it light with something. If you, let's do this. What personality trait do you possess that you are most proud of? So name, what you do, and personality trait you're most proud of. And we're going to start with Joe.
Yeah, you'd put me on the spot. My name is Joe Paiva, and I am CEO of GeoLearn. GeoLearn is an online education company. And shameless plug, it's geo-learn.com if you want to check out what we have to offer. Continuing education for licensed land surveyors, and in a few months we'll start offering technician training as well. We're located in Kansas City, but obviously we're on the World Wide Web, so you can access us from anywhere. But the second thing I want to mention is that I am also an adjunct at the State Technical College of Missouri, where I do online education. I also have done and currently support online education at the Missouri University of Science and Technology, as well as Kansas City, Kansas Community College. And get into the details of how I managed to do all that, because you can imagine it could be very busy, but it's not. And as far as personality traits, the one I like to tell people, which I used to tell my kids, is that I pay attention when people say things. It used to be when I was younger, I'd correct them all the time because I paid so much attention, probably from having taught students in college for so long, maybe. And now I still pay attention, but it's not quite as good because of the aging process. And if you don't know what that means, then don't ask.
I'm well aware of it. All right. Thanks, Joe, for that. Jim, you're next.
Oh, my name is Jim Coan. I'm a professional land surveyor in Washington and Oregon and a certified federal surveyor. I taught at Renton Technical College for 23 years, and I was also adjunct faculty at Seattle University for 5 years. And actually, I'm adjunct at Renton now for their own program. We have our second year online, and I help out there. I also work for One Alliance Geomatics here in the Seattle area. I'm their quality control manager. And it's really a very nice job in that I'm working with the project managers, and we're going over their work when they have problems and stuff, and I try to help them with solutions and to see what they're doing. So we have problems ironed out before we have our deliverables to our clients, and that's where I come in. My personality trait, that's a hard one. I take pride in the fact that I like to work with people, and I like to help people, especially in the surveying profession when I can. And all of you that are in the teaching thing, I think it's an honor to be a teacher. And I take that very seriously, and I'm very proud of it. And so I guess that's where I stand.
Fantastic, Jim. Thank you for that. Todd, you're up next.
All right, my name's Todd Horton. I teach at Parkland College, a community college in Champaign, Illinois. I started the land surveying program there back in 2001. and I am the director of our construction management programs, and I support our land surveying programs pretty heavily. I'm also the owner of Meridian Geospatial Consulting. It's a professional training company. We do seminar services for geospatial professionals, and I've worked in 42 states. I keep bumping into Joe at conferences where we're both speaking sometimes, and been doing presentation work since the early 2000s. Been teaching for 23 years. I'm a professional engineer and a professional land surveyor in Illinois. And personality-wise, since I started out as an engineer, I have no personality that I am aware of.
That's great.
My daughter calls me Papa Bear, and that seems to fit me well because I'm thinking about retiring from the sport of competitive napping and cross-training into hibernation, because as a bear, I've got the personality for it. The great thing is you get to eat a lot first. You go to sleep. People leave you alone for 3 months, and when you wake up, you've lost weight. So it sounds like the best of all worlds to me.
I like it. And you know what? I'm glad to know that napping is a sport. I'm going to have to let my wife know that, because I'm kind of an amateur at it, but I'm getting really good.
I was going to say, I'm an up-and-comer on that one lately with this whole COVID thing.
Are you guys endurance nappers or are you sprint nappers?
Oh, gosh. I guess I'm probably a sprint napper at this point.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do it, I do it right.
Yeah.
I get comfortable. I make it a whole spectacle. But
I was doing about a 2-hour workout this weekend, and it felt like it was coming to an end, and I got a second wind and I was able to go for another hour.
All right.
Way to power through.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Todd, thank you for that. We've got Adam. Adam, go ahead, buddy.
Hey guys, like Todd, I'm kind of interested in the competitive napping, but maybe get an hour at a time right now. But so my name's Adam McCartney, and I'm a survey party chief. Currently work at the Maricopa County Department of Transportation. I've been there about 3 years. I got about 19 years experience in the field, and I just enrolled. This will be my 3rd semester at Great Basin College. So like we talked about earlier, I'm on a path to try and get ahead and get out of the field, get licensed, that kind of thing. I have a CST III that I got about 10 years ago. And personality-wise, probably just dedication and hard work. And I'm really big on being a team player. I believe in working with each other, trying to get things done, solve problems in the field, that kind of thing.
That's great. I've known Adam for, about 15 years. He, when I first moved out to Arizona in 2005, he worked for the company that I worked for, and got to know him then. We've stayed in touch over the course of time, and I haven't had a chance to work with him since. I'm trying to recruit him on a regular basis, but it just hasn't happened yet. I think our paths will cross again at some point from a work standpoint, no question. But Adam, appreciate you being here. Appreciate all you guys being here. We've got a great perspective, very diverse. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I'm certain that, this is the beauty of these roundtables. I'm going to learn something. I can tell you right now, I'm going to learn something. So if that's the case, I know some of our listeners are going to learn something as well, which is the goal, of course.
I don't want to blow the heads up of these guys, but you've been pretty excited about this one.
Yeah, definitely. No doubt about it. So let's get into this. Let me kind of set it up a little bit. There's a number of, let's say, different paths one can take to become a land surveyor. There is experience in mentoring. There is, apprenticeship, much like, the union model, I guess. There is formal education. And quite honestly, there's a combination of all three. So we're going to touch on all these and I guess maybe try to figure out the best way to go, if there is a best way to go. And of course, it depends on what state you're in and ultimately what your goal or goals may be. So we got like 5 different talking points we're going to try to get through. And the first thing is, there's not a lot, and that's probably an understatement, of post-secondary education opportunities in the U.S. for land surveyors, which, I mean, it's becoming a problem. I know a lot of programs are seeing decline in registrants or enrollment. I know there's programs that have closed over the last few years. It's not trending in a really good direction. So let's start with Joe. Joe, tell us what your thoughts are in regards to that topic.
So when it comes to the ideal background to become a licensed professional land surveyor, I really think the ideal would be a combination of a 4-year degree, an appropriate amount of experience, but an experience that involves engaging with the profession. So most states, I believe today, have some kind of a degree requirement, but it's not always mandatory. It's not the sole path. Certainly in my home state of Missouri, we only require, and this is the minimum standard is to have 12 credit hours in surveying coursework. You don't have to have a college degree. And I'm actually involved in teaching a lot of those people who've never been to college in their life. Some of them are 50 years old. And finally, as many of you will probably agree, for many people, becoming a licensed professional is kind of a delayed vocation. And so that's the practical side of it. Unfortunately, we have so few programs that I really think the future to be able to address this need is to have online programs. And I know there are a couple at least represented here on this roundtable, but there's many others. And the big problem is that the brick and mortar schools, many of them are always fighting the enrollment battle. Some are doing really well and have kind of a consistent student base that comes in at the 4-year level, same thing at the 2-year level, but others are constantly worried about whether they'll continue to exist. Some of you probably know about what happened in New Mexico, for example. So, but the ideal would be a 4-year degree, at least a college degree, but I would prefer a 4-year degree myself when I see the future demands on what a surveying professional needs to deliver, because one of the biggest problems with getting the surveying profession as a whole engaged, certainly in my state, is that they tend to looking in the rearview mirror. Well, I didn't need it. Well, I'll grudgingly accept that maybe with GPS and a couple of other new technologies, maybe a little bit of college would be helpful. But I don't think they're projecting well enough into what a future land surveyor might be, especially one who has a successful business, if they own one or partially own one.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. And again, this is the beauty of having this type of group together, because right out of the gate, I'm going to disagree with you on one point. And that is, I mean, I became a surveyor kind of the old school way, and that was, I mean, my degree is in architecture, and I went back to school and got 24 hours of survey classes. And the first state I was licensed in was Missouri, then Illinois, and then Iowa, just because of those individual state requirements at the time. That's the order that I could get registered. For example, in Illinois, I mean, it took me 8 years after the time I graduated college with a degree in architecture before I could sit for the SIT exam. Now, Illinois has, now they've incorporated a 2 or a 4-year degree for sure. I mean, me personally, and I mean, I look forward to hearing the rest of your opinions, of course. I mean, I think it's a combination of a 2-year degree plus experience. But at the same time, I can see why somebody would lean towards the idea of a 4-year degree just because of the technology side of things. Technology is advancing at such a rapid rate in the survey profession that what it takes to understand everything. Maybe it is a 4-year degree. I don't know, but I'm a little bit old school that way. Jim, how about you? What do you got to say on that?
Well, I have, I'm much like you. When I started surveying a long time ago, I had no idea what it was. I just needed a job. I had just come back from Vietnam, and I was working at a 7-Eleven, and our surveyor hired me out of there, handed me a plumb bob, and I had no idea what that was all about.
Yep.
But I think in a perfect world, I have to agree with Joe. If you could do it and go get a 4-year degree at a good surveying school, that's wonderful. Hard to do. Most people can't do it for any number of reasons. And so the 2-year schools, like the one that I taught at, they have a good alternative. And there you go with the combination of education and experience. And in the state of Washington, we don't have an education requirement, but we do have continuing education requirements, if that makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're licensed, continuing education. And I think that we need to be able to have a combination of all these things. And one of the things that I've always been an advocate of is that the professional surveyor, wherever you are, is you're not legally bound to mentor your technicians, but you certainly are morally bound to. And I think that that's a big deal, and we need to work along with our state societies in order to help the technicians come along, because they're our future. You know, every licensed surveyor here, you know, when you send a party chief out there, he's carrying your stamp, and if he doesn't know what he's doing, that's going to come back on you. And so the more they know, the better off everybody is. And I think that, you know, I wish we had more opportunities for formal education. But Joe, I have to give you a heads up, because I think what you do is just invaluable to the surveying profession. I've seen what you offer, and I think it's just amazing. Going back to our state societies, with the Land Surveyor Association of Washington, we set up a PLS refresher course, and we have it online right now, so people studying for their exams can go online and they can take this course for a series of different courses to help them with their exam. And it's things like this, and especially with this COVID, the way things are going now, we need to think outside of the box. We need to start putting this stuff together. I see we're going to talk about that later on, but I think that's my time is up, I believe.
No, that's good stuff, Jim. I appreciate that. Todd, what's your perspective on this?
Jim, like you, I agree that our technicians are the foundation of our profession. Generally, when I talk to people, they're saying we need 3 to 5 technicians for every land surveyor. And I know in my state, there's been such a push over the last 2 decades to make sure that we're getting professional land surveyors pumped out, that we have neglected our technicians. Our technicians are the most underserved and most important people in our profession. There are some good things happening in Illinois that we're very excited about. In fact, through the U.S. Department of Labor, the Illinois Professional Land Surveyors Association has created a new apprenticeship. It is not a union-associated thing. Department of Labor is in the process of creating all kinds of apprenticeships that are not associated with any of the trades or the unions. So this includes some training that Parkland is providing, Parkland College, where I work. And in fact, as something that the Land Surveyors Association is doing as part of this, they have a small handful of new apprentices that are going to be doing, we call it a boot camp, basically learning how to set up and operate basic instruments. And that's next week. And those apprentices will be starting some formal training over it'll be effectively 4 college level courses at Parkland College spread out over the next 2 years. We're very excited about this because we know that if we grow an apprenticeship program, eventually some of those apprentices will self-identify as future professionals. Think about this. Jim, you know this very well. The military, they don't recruit for officers. They recruit for enlisted because they need a lot of them. And some of those enlisted recruits self-identify as officers. The ones you need to step into professional leadership roles will bubble from within. And I think this is a message that has caught on in Illinois. Another thing that I think has been helpful, and we may want to come back to this, but in Illinois at Parkland, we have changed the way we do things. We've evaluated our market and realized the low-hanging fruit, the people that want the most to come get training, to get licensed, are the ones who can't because they're already working. So we have changed our model so that instead of having to come to classes during the week, they come get our labs, our hands-on labs on weekends. So instead of coming, once a week for 16 weeks, they come 3 weekends per course. So our mantra is come earn 24 credit hours of surveying by coming to Parkland 1 weekend a month for 24 months. So
It's like the Army Reserves.
Yeah, it kind of
really
is.
Yeah.
When I was in the Air National Guard, I got kind of used to this being gone all weekend, and our students really love it because it fits their life.
Yeah, no, that's awesome that you've built in the flexibility, because I don't know if there's such thing as a traditional student these days, especially in surveying. I don't know if there ever was, to be honest with you.
No.
I'll be honest with you. So
Can I interrupt one second
Yeah,
here?
of course, Jim,
I just
please.
want to bring up one more thing.
Yeah, please do.
Is that we also have to tell our surveyors that if you choose to stay a technician, you can make a very good living at it.
That's right.
Every person does not have to become a professional.
That's right.
And a good technician, as we all know, they're worth their weight in gold.
You're right, Jim. I think you nailed it on the head. Honestly, I couldn't do what I do if I didn't have rock star technicians. It's that simple. Not everybody has the aspiration, let's say, to be a licensed professional surveyor, and that's okay. That's okay.
That's right.
Those surveyors, those instrument operators, party chiefs, so on and so forth. I mean, those are the folks making the money. Let's face it. Those are the ones that are making the company money, and they're invaluable. Absolutely. So here again, the beauty of this panel is, Joe, Jim, and Todd, you guys are all currently or have been part of academia. And then we have Adam on board. So Adam's going to have a little bit different perspective. He's the guy, boots on the ground. He's the guy working towards becoming licensed and at the same time obtaining an education. So Adam, what do you got to say about this?
Well, two things while they're fresh in my mind is Jim is absolutely right. I have made a pretty good living being a solid technician and party chief in the field. And there's no reason that I can't continue to do that for another 20 years and sail off into the sunset. I have drive inside that's pushing me to go beyond being just a party chief. The other thing is, Todd, I wish we had an opportunity like that in Arizona to go on the weekend and at least get some kind of credits. When Kent, when you first moved out here, they did have a program at Phoenix College for land surveying. I don't know if it was for an associate's degree or a certificate or a BAS. And I had the opportunity to attend at that time, but I never had the drive to do it. I didn't want to go to an actual class at the end of the day after surveying all day, and I let it slip me by. And that program went away during the Great Recession. And it wasn't until I got a little older that I decided that that's something that I really wanted to do. In Arizona, I think, I forgot which one of you is in Washington.
That's Jim.
Yeah, Arizona has no educational requirement for licensure. So anybody can go get a license in Arizona. And I've seen some surveys that are evidence of that. And so my thinking, what I wanted to do was try and do something that in the future is going to separate myself from my peers, because it's getting more and more competitive out there. So I am pursuing the Bachelor of Applied Science in Land Surveying to help me get an edge. So not just a license, but a degree to help me get an edge and move forward. I just wish, like I said, we had those opportunities here in town, because now I have to, and real quick too, I'd like to add, just that I reached a point when I discovered Great Basin College, and with the advent of online technology, there was really no more excuses for me not to do this. I can do it right here from my desk at home, late into the night, early in the morning. So I ran out of excuses. So.
Oh man, yeah. Like I say, I've known Adam for about 15 years, and I've definitely seen him, him grow as a surveyor. And when I found out he was pursuing an education and licensure, I was really, really happy because, and I still look at Adam, and this is a whole nother topic, but I look at Adam as a young surveyor. And Adam, how old are you? You're 40.
I'm 43. I'll be 44 next month.
44, and I still look at you as a young surveyor.
I am. I still look at myself. When I met you, I still remember real quick too.
Yeah.
First project I did for you, you were the project manager. I was a young party chief. I probably had less than a year as a party chief. And I set up the project in U.S. survey feet because that's what I had always been taught to do at my previous jobs.
Yeah.
Kent calls me up in the field one day and says, "Hey, I see you set your job up in U.S. survey feet." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, the state of Arizona uses the international foot, right?" Okay. So yeah, I was pretty inexperienced when I met Kent, but every day I learn a little more.
Yeah.
Even right now. So
hey, you and me both, man. When we stop learning, we stop living. I'm telling you.
Yep.
No doubt about it. All right, so let's touch on this real quick. There are a lot of not a lot, but there's some different types of opportunities. You have a handful of, say, university survey programs. You have a handful of community college survey programs, and of course, as been already mentioned, there's a bunch of online learning. Todd, I'm going to start with you. You've talked a little bit about what you have going on at Parkland, but do you think one route's better than the other, or is it just one of those deals where it's good to have options, that people have options?
Well, I think options are always good, and really those options depend on the leadership within your state. There are some states that have had some great leadership at the university level. Missouri, where Joe is, there's been really a long history of very qualified people there. Here in Illinois, we've had surveying programs at SIU Carbondale, SIU Edwardsville, Northern Illinois University, and at Parkland. And the two that remain are Edwardsville and Parkland. And one of the reasons that Parkland is able to keep doing its thing is that we're fairly nimble from a business model standpoint. My colleague Corey Allred, who joined us, he came to us from Northern Illinois University. He joined us last year, just a year ago. He witnessed firsthand how at the university level, just because of the infrastructure and the way the whole system is governed, it takes a long time to implement a lot of things. Well, we went from a traditional survey program to our new weekend land survey program format in 6 months. We started advertising it. In fact, we rolled it out at the 2017 annual conference of land surveyors in February. And that very day, once we announced it, I had people coming to our table saying, "Where do I sign up?" And in fact, we're at the point now that the very first person who did that, we're going to bring her on as a classroom assistant. She's finished the program. She's passed her SIT. We're going to bring her on as a classroom assistant, kind of a poster child for the program. But so the community college can be fairly nimble. We have the ability to hire people based on their experience, whereas some of the universities don't, they have to, just because of their charter, they have to bring people in with the master's and the PhD level. And, there's not too many of those. Joe is a national treasure in that regard, because he's been doing this for so long and he's got the education. His colleague Dick Elgin and our guy Corey Allred and several others, have been great treasures. But the the overhead and the infrastructure that you see at the university level, it can be a blessing, but it can also be a cost that has to be dealt with. So that's just a little part of the argument, but I throw that out there as at least hopefully a half-hearted response.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm going to kind of change it up here midstream. I think a root of the problem is, and Adam mentioned it, for example, here in Arizona, I think Arizona's, lower, I don't know, I think maybe there's 2 states that don't require any post-secondary education. And not only that, we don't require any continuing education either. And I always say, my dog could get registered in Arizona. But the thing is, every state is different as far as what the requirements are. Do you ever think we would get to the point, or would there be value in every state having the same requirements, whatever that be, whether that be a 4-year degree, 2-year degree with X amount of years of experience, or just experience, who knows? So Jim, what do you think about that?
Well, I'm against it. There you go.
Yeah, no, it's
Done
great.
and done.
Good.
Here's what here's why. As you know, all surveys are local, and we can't have one set standard for every state. Now, I believe you're talking about academic standards, not practical standards.
Or a combination of the two. Yep.
Yes. Well, the practical standards for exams, for state exams, the laws are different from state for state. So you can't just say, okay, if I'm licensed in Washington, I can come down to Arizona and survey. That would be suicidal. But I think that as far as academic requirements are concerned, I'm not totally against those. I don't know where it is, whether it should be. At this point in my life, I'm against having a bachelor's degree requirement, and that's because of availability. It would be great if one of my students that I was teaching at Renton Tech, and they've done this before, go on down to OIT, or they go to another school and get their 4-year degree. That's a wonderful thing, but it doesn't happen very often. And if we have a 2-year requirement, we have to have the avenue for the guy, like Adam over here, I'll use you as an example, to get his formal education while he's working. So we have to put that model together. And that's a combination of working with academia, which Todd can tell you, and so can Joe. That can be a nightmare in itself. But also in conjunction with our state organizations like the Land Surveyor Association of Washington or whatever we have in there. And we have to start thinking about how we can put these models together. I would like to see some kind of formal education because I think it would be better for the profession, but I don't know where that cutoff is. Does that make sense to you? I don't know if it's X number of hours in surveying classes, whether it's an associate's degree in surveying, whether it's a bachelor's degree or a bachelor's degree in surveying. I have a tendency to get confused on that, and I really think that life experience in the surveying profession is worth its weight in gold if it's done right.
Yeah, I could not agree.
Excuse me.
No,
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. And I personally couldn't agree with you more. I feel like I took the longest way possible to become a licensed surveyor, but I would not change that path for anything. I had a mentor when I first started that I worked with for the better part of 12 years, the very first job I had out of college. And without him, I would not be where I am today. College had nothing to do with it. My success was as a result of my mentor, who I am forever indebted to. Joe, what do you got to say about that?
So I'd like to start by my opening comment, which was, and I believe I said, ideally, I would like to see surveyors have a 4-year degree. That's ideally. I didn't say that's what I want and that I'm pushing for today. So let's call it aspirational.
Yeah.
in fact, one of the things that's happening, I just retired. I'm now the past president of the Surveying and Geomatics Educators Society. And one of the things that I see in that society is, in my opinion, some of them are probably going to jump on me, but because because I'm no longer president, I probably am okay with it. But I don't see all the schools that are represented in the membership of the educators working equally hard to look at the future and try to understand what the needs are. That's something we're doing differently in Missouri. We've decided let's provide as much of the education online as possible so that they can get it no matter where they are in the state or for that matter in the country. We still make them come to campus just like Todd does, but we even have a twist on that, which I got when I taught for a year at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They allow labs to be done remotely mentored. So we have lab projects and we tell the students, if you're too far away from campus, you find a licensed surveyor who'll actually sign on the dotted line and provide the equipment, all the support. We give you a lab project to do. You sit down with your mentor and you figure out in your situation, because you may not have a campus that looks like ours at your work situation, to redesign a little bit. Do your lab project with the equipment that your mentor provides, and then you send it in to be graded. And this came partly from being a member of ABET and wanting to see an equivalent experience between on-campus instruction and remote instruction. So we're still doing the grading the same way. We still provide the same outline for how the project is done, but different people do it differently. And I think that's a good recipe. It's not the only recipe for in the future being more inclusive of the entire population to have access to good surveying education. One of the things that's happening inside the same group, SAGES, Surveying and Geomatics Educators Society, is the trend towards, okay, maybe not a 4-year degree in surveying, but let's ask for a 4-year degree in a related area where you have, just like you do, Kent, a substantial number of courses in surveying. Here's the reason. There's something about going to college and getting a 4-year degree that you get that is more than just plain old education, meaning book knowledge. Mm-hmm. It teaches you to be a more mature thinker, teaches you to be a more mature writer, teaches you to be a more mature speaker. And I think all of these characteristics are really important looking into the future for the next generation or two of surveyors. So there's 54 jurisdictions in the United States, because you've got to count Puerto Rico, DC, and a whole bunch of other smaller areas. And there's no way in heck, I'm going to say, because I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the other word, to get them all to subscribe to the same set of educational standards. I agree with Jim that every state has unique laws and customs that make it impossible to have a national license where you just sign on the dotted line, pay a check, and you get, although a few states have started doing it. I think Kentucky may be the first one. We have enough differences right here in Missouri just with the U.S. Public Land Survey system from all adjoining states, leave alone all the western states. There's no way that a surveyor who is familiar with the Public Land Survey system in those states can come to Missouri and actually do it correctly. And that's exhibited in the fact that they come in assuming that they take the state-specific exam, as most of you know, that's administered as part of the comedy process, and they fail it. And some of them fail it 10 times and they still don't get it, because that's the other problem. Because they haven't had the discipline of study and research, at least that's my view, from a 4-year degree process, they don't bother to crack open the books, whether that's the statute books or some book written by some knowledgeable surveyor in the state that tells them how to do it. They just keep thinking, if I keep beating my head against the wall, meaning take the exam 10 times, I'll eventually figure it out. The same way surveyors sometimes say, I don't need to know how to use this fancy equipment, I'll figure it out, and they still have their shrink wrap manuals 2 years later.
Yep.
So that's the problem. I mean, don't get me wrong. Today, I am very actively involved in advancing 2 two-year colleges towards establishing a two-year degree program, because that's what the uh, societal restrictions allow, because there's the chicken and the egg, right?
Yep.
People say, well, we want to have a four-year degree program, or where are the students? But the students, you go and recruit them, they're going to say, where's the program? So you have to kind of build each one up a little bit at a time to get to a level where we, again, have a better situation. But I agree that the states that have no educational requirements at all, and I see Missouri at the low end, but I didn't realize that there were states lower than us by as much as you just described. I think it would do the entire profession a lot of good, because what we're doing is reinforcing old behaviors that have existed in the last century that maybe worked out well for the professionals then, but which isn't, we're doing a disservice to the professionals of the future.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 110%. And Adam, I'm going to go to you with this one. It's interesting in your case. You've been serving. How many years have you been serving?
19 years.
19 years. So you were serving, let's say, 17 years before you decided to go to school, and
Yes, pretty much.
You did that in a state that does not require any post-secondary education. So kudos to you for wanting to further your education, your understanding as it pertains to surveying. What are your thoughts on the topic of at least a minimum of a 2-year degree required? And again, coming from Arizona.
Well, when I get my 2-year degree, on the way to the 4-year degree, I will think everybody should have to have one. But all jokes aside, it's a catch-22. I mean, it's something I think that probably needs to be done in almost every state, a minimum 2-year degree. But again, having the avenue to achieve that is not as easy as it seems. If a state requires education for licensure, but there's no avenue to obtain that education in the state, it's kind of hard to do. So,
yep.
But yeah, I think overall it is a good idea. Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned that you achieved the CST level 3, and that's no joke. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because the CST program allows folks to gain credentials on their path to licensure, should they decide to go that direction, or just to build their confidence at the same time. I guess we're going back to the topic of the technicians. I know, there's unions as far as apprenticeships goes, but I keep going back to mentoring and how important that is. Again, I was very fortunate to have an unbelievable mentor. Those unbelievable mentors, they are few and far between these days. And fewer people are willing to pass along their knowledge, their wisdom, their expertise as it pertains to surveying, which puts us in a really, really tough spot. I mean, Todd, what do you think about that?
Well, I see the mentoring thing is a trend that the loss of mentoring is a trend that parallels our technology. As we went from taping everything and doing control work with in-bar tapes and things like that, and we got an EDM. Wow, crew size started shrinking. Mm-hmm. And by the time I showed up doing survey in the early 90s, if you had a 3-man crew, you were working for the state. And if it was a 2-man crew, that was everybody else in reality. Yeah. And then now we're down to 1-man crews. Where does mentoring go? Well, so our technology has made our crew sizes smaller. Yes, mentoring has gone away as a consequence of our, I guess you could say, our technological and economic choices. So I see mentoring as something that we replace somehow. And I think the apprenticeship models are a great way to do that. I think I believe New York State has a fairly aggressive or fairly well-developed apprenticeship model. California, I think they do apprenticeships through the union side, don't they?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
Yeah. So I think those are. I guess the way I'm looking at it is, if you can't do mentoring the way we've done it in the past, and we have to find a different way to impart those lessons.
Yep.
We can't just keep wishing it back into existence. There are plenty of us that would like to say, well, yeah, I don't like one-man crews, but I can't afford not to do one-man crews. We'd love to be able to say to, we're going to hire a new guy and say, we're going to give you 3 years on a 2-man crew. Well, we're going to do our best to give you some good training, but it's never going to be quite enough. So I think structured training is an answer. Now, how we do that is going to vary from place to place. Sometimes I wonder, this is just thinking out loud here. I wonder if state associations may be the place to get started. Maybe state associations are standing up their own training programs. Maybe it's not even a formal apprenticeship, but maybe it's a matter of saying, hey, quarterly, we've got this cadre of talented surveyors who are also pretty good at teaching. We're going to have, technician camp once a quarter in different corners of the state. I don't know, but I see technician training as I guess I'm repeating myself, is one of our biggest needs right now. And mentoring is what used to do that.
Yep. No, I totally agree. Jim, I know you've been involved with NSPS and are familiar with the CST program. I mean, talk a little bit about that and the value of that in your eyes.
Oh, let me tell you, I'll answer that by telling you a story. I started surveying in Maryland back in '68, and it was a job. I was a young father, had to work, that kind of stuff. Had the opportunity to move to Alberta, Canada for a job. And I did. And I worked out there. Well, in Alberta, they had a thing called the, let me see what it's called, the Alberta Society of Engineering Technicians. And my boss had me apply for it because it was a certification program. Long story short, I became a certified engineering technician for the Alberta Society. That changed my professional career. Getting that piece of paper, I started thinking of surveying as a profession instead of a job to put food on the table. That right there alone. Now, as far as the CST program is concerned, I think it's worth its weight in gold, and I wish more people would do it, because what that does is it tells the employer, I'm a certified surveying technician, I have a certain competence level. You have that. And, there's always pluses or minuses, or some people not going to live up to it, but that's a great thing on a technician's resume. I know I would sooner hire a certified technician than one who wasn't. And not only does it do that, like you say, you're a level 3, Adam.
Yes.
That's a commitment.
Yep.
I mean, that's not just, oh, I think I'll just take the exam. And you need to really be committed to do that. And I think it's a great thing for technicians. We talked about the people who want to stay technicians their entire career because they love being a party chief or they like work, or whatever reason. Great CAD people, stuff like that. That is also a credential for them. They can put CST after their name. Those are big deal things, especially in our profession, because face it, folks, we all like credentials.
Yep.
I mean, and I don't know a profession that doesn't like credentials. And That's wonderful. I think that the CST program's great. Now, as far as mentoring, I'd like to talk about that for just a little bit. That's the reason I wrote that book, was for mentoring. And I said that we had a moral obligation to mentor our technicians and our young professionals, the ones that are just brand new licensed, because face it, first time any of us stamped something, I don't know where your heart was, but mine was right. And so, you know, we have this moral obligation, and we can't do it the way we did. I learned how to calculate a horizontal curve over the hood of a truck, you know.
Yep.
We can't do that kind of stuff now. So we have to set up these apprenticeships like you were talking about. And we need to set this up. And I think it's a marriage between education, the community college, the technical colleges, the professional organizations. If they can come up to some kind of a marriage, that's how, for example, that's how the surveying program at Renton Tech got started. The education committee chairman for the LSAW, Land Surveyor Association of Washington, came to the school and said they wanted to put together a 2-year program. And the president of the school said, yeah, we'll look into that, but we have to get a buy-in from the profession first. I went up there and I went to our board of directors meetings, and I explained to them what we wanted to do. And they bought into it. They endorsed it. I took that back to the president of the school, and he said, oh, great, we can start working on this. And because I'm a technical college, or Renton Technical College is a technical college and not a community college, we have a different standard. We had students for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Oh,
That
wow.
was the model. That was the model. And so when we put the program together, our advisory committee came in and they brought in some other surveyors, and the dean said, if you could have your surveyors learn anything you wanted them to learn, what would it be? And they started writing it down, and we refined it from there, and that's how we created our curriculum. And it was a very successful model from the surveyors that are graduates. As a matter of fact, I'm working for one of my graduates. That's really cool.
That is.
And several of my graduates are project managers there. But you know, these that's how we got this. And we have from the graduates that we've kept track of, we've had 78 professional land surveyors, and we've had over 100 LSITs.
Wow.
And those are the ones that we could get in touch with and find out about.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's worked out, but we have to work together on these things. We just can't just go off on our own.
Yep, no question.
I know I rambled on there, and I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not at all, Jim, not at all. And I think one thing that I want to circle back on that you said, credentials show commitment. And
Yes.
whether that be a CST, an LS, RLS, what have you, it shows commitment. It shows a certain level of professionalism. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but I found out not too long ago that in the UK, they actually have a survey school. It's called the Survey School by, I think it's the Land Surveyors Association is the name of their group, possibly. I'm not sure exactly. I have to go back and look. But they have, it's almost like a surveyor's boot camp, you know, kind of like what you guys have talked about. And I mean, to get people introduced to the profession, you know, at a technician level, whether it be field or office, going that route, I think is a genius idea. I mean, how we change the paradigm of the way people think and get to that point, I have no idea. But something like that definitely does, like you said, Todd, it takes the place of what used to be mentoring. You know?
I'd like to comment on that a little bit too. Our challenge is having a message in the high schools that competes.
Yep.
That competes with other voices, and I don't see us so much competing with our colleagues in the construction trades. I mean, they do great work in recruiting because they can say, when you come to work for us, we're looking for somebody that has a good work ethic, has a great attitude, and is ready to learn. You don't have to have skills. We're going to fix that. And along the way, this is what your starting pay is going to be, and this is what it's going to at least going to be this when you end. Well, that's a message that we're starting to put out. And that's a message that catches the attention of high school students. And we're hoping that this will, I guess we can tune our message to the folks we're trying to attract.
Yeah, no question about it. Man, yeah, some really good points. So we've pretty much got through like the 5 talking points that I was hoping we'd get through. But I do want to ask you guys one thing, and I'm going to start with you, Joe, on this. Of course, COVID-19, it's had an effect on the profession, of course, not necessarily in a good way. And I think it's going to also have an effect on a lot of the things we've talked about, how, surveyors go about obtaining education. Joe, I know you're really big, obviously, with the online learning. And, I know there are some registration boards that are somewhat, I think, as you mentioned, reluctant to accept online content, even for continuing education. That's going to have to change, I believe. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Joe?
Well, as far as the online continuing education goes, many states have actually put waivers in place to allow. So Missouri has a limitation. They say you can get up to 60% of your required continuing education through online, but you have to get the remainder with, and they use a word that escapes me, but basically needs to be in person. You need to receive the instruction from a live person in the room. So since the pandemic has hit, my company GeoLearn, just because we deliver our continuing education using video, have a lot of experience doing probably what Jake's doing. And so we've gone in and managed virtual conferences for state associations, and we've done them as hybrid events. So we actually take a bunch of cameras down and a live switcher. We shoot the event as if we're taping, but we're actually webcasting it. And it's amazing how many people come back with, this is such a great way to get education. Why does the licensing board have all these limitations? Because I can get an MBA online from a really good school, not some school nobody ever heard of that just sells sheepskins, really good quality schools. And yet I can't get continuing education online. What's wrong with this picture? And I think it's backward thinking on the part of someone at the licensing board. I don't know if it's the surveyors or someone that manages all the licensing boards. But part of the problem too is that surveyors don't take enough control of their profession. So this whole thing about educational requirements, why aren't the professional surveyors in Arizona, to pick an example at random, working harder to institute a requirement for education to become licensed? And if people say it's too hard, why not query people like us to ask, well, how can we overcome some of the barriers of throwing up? I know how it worked in my state because I've been fighting this education issue for a good 30 years. And I would say it took about 10 years to get to just the point where surveyors would accept a modicum of education. And I think it's partly because they were feeling exposed, because they didn't have the education. They somehow thought they shouldn't put that as an expectation for the surveyors of tomorrow. And in my opinion, they were being short-sighted because they were selling the newcomers short by saying, you don't need to be any better than us. And I don't look at it that way. I want my children to be better than me. I want my students to be better than me. And I want their students to be better than them. And if we don't have that way of thinking in the profession, and we don't have enough of us educators and other people with 4-year degrees who have kind of a broader view of how that works, how you pass the baton. It's not simply learning how to lay a brick on another brick and how much mortar you put in, and you've learned that technique for a zillion years, and let's keep doing it for a zillion years, because surveying is changing. Actually, how you build brick walls has changed too. But we sometimes, as a profession, tend to think of our profession as being static, that there's nothing changing in how we do our work, whether that's the legal aspects or any other thing. I mean, I just taught a review course So I actually had to webcast a course that I was teaching. Fortunately, I had my team in there managing it. And I was really surprised to see how little interest, not just knowledge, but how little interest there was on the part of these people who were there to take the licensing exam, meaning that they had the education and believed they had all the experience requirements met to be able to take the license. And yet, just to pick one area, they knew nothing about geodesy because they said, well, I don't need to know geodesy to do land surveys. Well, you do, because in Missouri, if you're going to comply with standards for property boundary surveys, you have to publish state plane coordinates. And just with the changes coming in 22 or 23 or whenever, right?
Yep.
You better start learning this stuff. And what they do instead is push the button and they have no idea. And my bet is that if I went out and evaluated the state plane coordinates published by surveyors, that many of them would be wrong. I'm not going to say at this point it would be most, but just based on my interviews of professional surveyors as well as the ones who are in this course, they know very little about it. So I'm not seeing this desire to be exceptional, to deliver your best possible product, to just because the landowner or whoever's buying the survey, the title company, the mortgage company, whoever, doesn't understand state plane coordinates and will never know how to check them, doesn't mean that you don't do your level best to make sure that those state plane coordinates are actually what they should be, because they should be thinking about it in the same way they often talk about, as Jim said, staking their reputation when they put their seal on the survey. And I think many surveyors are actually today letting many surveys be published, whatever that means, being recorded or being delivered to clients when they are less than the best they can be doing. And I think it's a problem with the profession that we haven't looked outwardly enough. We only look inward and we always look in the rearview mirror. How have we done it in the past? Let's keep doing it that way.
Yeah, gosh. I'm sorry. Did you have something, Jim?
No, I agree, Joe. I agree with you 100%. We need to look forward. I used to tell my students when I started surveying in 1968, it was closer to the way George Washington surveyed than the way we're surveying today.
Good point.
And we have got to do that. You put a robotic total station in front of me, and I'd hang my hat on it, or something like I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. We're not plain surveyors anymore. We're geodetic surveyors, like it or not.
Yep.
And we need to know that stuff, and we need those technicians to know it. I teach a class on random error theory, and I think that's one of the most valuable classes a technician can learn.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they need to know what measurements are about, those kinds of things. And it's getting bigger. That's why I used to be one of those guys. Nope, we don't need any education requirements. By God, I came up with that way, all that kind of stuff that we've all heard. But my mind has been changed. We need to have the technical expertise, and that comes through a combination of experience and education.
Yeah.
In
Soapbox.
in this course that I was teaching, I had a random error section, and everybody takes notes, but I can see their eyes glaze over. Okay, I need to know this for the exam, but then I can forget about it. I can just read their minds. And that's the unfortunate part, because partly it's the mentoring, or maybe I should say the substandard mentoring that they get from people in the profession, and the lack of what I call the broader worldview of where's the profession in time today? Where's the profession going? What do I need to prepare myself for 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, not just get my license and then retire on my laurels and never learn a darn thing again?
Yeah, really good point. Really good point. So I think we're going to call this Survey Education Chapter 1, because there's a lot more that has come to my mind as we're having this discussion that I think we could take further. Unfortunately, we don't have all that time at the moment, but hopefully you guys will come back again in a few months to to take this a little bit further. I've really enjoyed this. That being said, I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to basically give some parting thoughts on the topic. And Adam, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Well, first I wanted to thank you for having me on. So I've really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed listening to what Jim, Joe, and Todd had to say. And just thinking about what Jim did just say, and I realized a couple of years ago that there was going to be a need for surveyors that have a bachelor's degree. Not a lot of people have that, especially here in Arizona. So it was kind of, I had a vision that there's going to be a need for this, and I want to be ready to fulfill that need in the future. So, and hopefully I'll get there. I'm going to be almost 50 by the time I finish the bachelor's degree. But like my advisor, Byron Calkins at Great Basin said, so you'll be 50 with a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, right. Yep. You'll
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I had it was really a educational discussion, and you guys, anybody who's listening, probably give a lot to think about to them. So
yeah. And Adam, just keep in mind, even if you're 50, you're still going to be a young surveyor.
Yeah, well, I'll take it, man.
That's right. That's right.
Adam, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank
It was kind of last minute, and can't tell you how much I appreciate you being able to jump on with us tonight. Todd,
Sure.
Go ahead, buddy.
Boy, there's so many things. An adage that I have learned, and it's doesn't just apply to surveying, and is match the tool to the task. And when it comes to education, sometimes we've got to start with the tools we have. I know that not every state has the ability to stand up an educational program, but they do have talent. Talent within their professional associations. And I believe as a profession, we have great opportunity ahead of us to cultivate that talent and to help those people to create those training opportunities for our future generations. So I appreciate Jim's perspective and Joe's perspective. Looking forward, the rear view mirror analogy has been very, very eye-opening for me, and I appreciate that. But I am very optimistic about what's going forward. I'm thrilled to death about CST. Very proud of what you've done, Adam, and I think that's because of your role there. You're a great role model for many other young technicians, and I guess I look at my professional challenge as helping us build the future of surveying education.
Yep, no question. And Todd, thank you again for being a part of this.
Happy
this
to
panel.
be here.
Really appreciate
Very
it.
happy to be here.
Mr. Coan.
Well, I thank you for having me on. It's quite an honor, and I appreciate it. We've talked a lot, and it seemed like the big theme here is not taking care of the professional. The professional has a lot of avenues that they can get education on, but that technician, they're the ones in the wind. And I'm going to put in a shameless plug for my book here, because I wrote a book called Survey Math for the technician who has little or no education. And I'm giving it away to anybody who wants it. Mind you, I'm not the world's greatest writer, but if you know a technician that wants to learn about something, and I have just basic stuff in there.
I told you this would be on YouTube.
And it's there for you if you want it. And I can't leave without telling a story about Joe. Many years ago, I was given a lecture on random error theory at the ACSM conference. I want to say it was in Arizona, but it could have been someplace else. And All of a sudden, Dr. Paiva walks in and sits right in the front of the classroom, and I go, "Oh my God! If I make a mistake, I'll never hear the end of this." About halfway through the presentation, I stopped being terrified of making a mistake. I don't know if I've ever told you that, Joe, but I sure remember it.
Those doctors are intimidating.
Yes, they are. And but I appreciate it. And anytime you want me back, all you got to do is ask.
Oh my gosh, we appreciate that, Jim. And you mentioned your book, and I have a copy of it, electronic copy, of course, in PDF, and it is invaluable. So we'll make sure that Adam gets a copy of that for sure.
Yeah. What was the name of the book?
We'll have Jim email it to you.
Sure.
Yeah. Give them, anybody who wants it, give them my email address, and I'll be glad to send them a PDF of it.
Yeah. Do you want to
also have a PowerPoint that goes with it if you want, if that'll.
Yep. It's like gold in my opinion. So, Joe, you got the last word, buddy.
Well, thanks for inviting me to participate. Yes, I'd be happy to come back. I think there's a lot of work that ties into what the profession ought to be doing, because the profession as a group and the profession as individuals really need to step up and do a lot more to make sure that the integrity as well as the viability of the profession continues, because it is their responsibility, even if they look to the licensing board. And I want to say, Jim, I love to go into classes that other people teach, because it's amazing how much I can learn from going to a class being taught on a subject I know, on a subject I don't know, because that's part of my lifelong learning program, and I wish more surveyors would subscribe to lifelong learning.
Yep, no question. Way to put a bow on it, Joe. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Ryan, got anything to add, man? I know I didn't give you a chance to say much tonight.
Well, this is your wheelhouse, so I fully understand that and appreciate all these guys bringing their perspectives. And the whole reason we started this, promote the profession, geomatics in general, but surveying specifically, and like you said, Adam being 50 and a young surveyor. Yeah, that's the whole reason we're here. So other than that, no, I couldn't add anything to this group.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was great. And again, thank you guys all. You're all leaders in your own right and what you're doing, and it's again, we're very humbled to have you guys on, so we appreciate it. All right. With that, as always, take the time to get involved with your local survey organization. Find out ways you can pay it forward. Look for opportunities to help out someone that is struggling during these crazy times. Bank some good karma. Remember, you get what you give. Thank you again for listening and for your continued support. Check out our friends of the program, as many of them are now offering promos exclusively for Geoholics listeners. Be sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, and now YouTube. Please take a second to subscribe to our channel. Feel free to send us an email at info@thegeoholics.com if you want to be a guest on a future show or a future panel. Thanks again, everybody. Until next time, stay safe and healthy.
Once again, thanks to our friends of the program, Bad Elf GPS. Find them at bad-elf.com. Land Surveyors United, landsurveyorsunited.com. LiDAR News, lidarnews.com. Parkland College Land Survey Program is parkland.edu/surveying. Unifly, unifli.aero. Diamondback Land Surveying, diamondbacklandsurveying.com. Advanced Geodetic Services, agsgps.com. Tiger Supplies at tigersupplies.com, and Cianic Automation at getjobbook.com.